Is your flooring stapler leaking air? Will it not fire? If so, you probably need to install a rebuild kit. The rebuild kit contains all of the O-rings, seals, and fasteners that typically wear out and cause problems with your flooring stapler. The rebuild kit is used for several different models and types of Bostitch flooring nailers and staplers, and you won't use every part in the kit. Most common issues, such as air leaks, not firing, and the driver not returning, will be solved by installing the rebuild kit. Installing a rebuild kit in your flooring stapler may seem difficult, but it is a repair that you can do yourself, and I'm going to show you how. I'll begin by removing the bumper on the top of the stapler. I just pry it away from the gun using a screwdriver. Now I'll remove the 4 screws that secure the top cap to the rest of the stapler. And I can remove the top cap. Now I'll remove the base from the stapler. It's held in place with 4 screws. Now I can remove the base from the stapler and the magazine and nose piece. Now I can remove the internal components from the gun. I'll start with the actuator. The actuator is actually attached to the poppet, and nothing will come out of the gun until you remove this part. To remove it, I'll use a small screwdriver in one of the vent holes. And this is just to hold it in place so it doesn't rotate as I turn the screws. With it locked, now I can turn the screws and remove them. Now I can pull the internal components out of the body. I'll pull the actuator from the top of the gun, and then I'll grab the driver and pull all the other pieces out the bottom. There's a seal that goes between the actuator and the poppet that tends to stay inside the gun when you remove everything else. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that now using a screwdriver. I'll insert the screwdriver through the top of the housing and push the seal out through the bottom. Now I'll disassemble the driver stem, and poppet assembly. It's easiest to do this by clamping it in a vise. It doesn't need to be really tight, just enough force so it won't rotate. And now I'll use a wrench on the top to remove the cap. And now I can pull the poppet away from the piston stem. Now we can begin installing the rebuild kit. I'll lay all the parts of the rebuild kit out, and that way I can compare the parts as I remove the old ones from the gun to the new parts in the rebuild kit. Because again, we won't use all the parts in this kit. I'll just kind of sort everything into like piles. So I have seals, fasteners, and O-rings. I'll replace each O-ring one at a time, and I'm going to start with the O-ring inside the poppet. I'll use a pick to pull the O-ring out. Now I'll match the O-ring up with the parts in the rebuild kit until I find the like one. Now I can install the new O-ring back into the poppet. This can be a little tricky. Get it started with my finger and then use the pick to finish the installation. Just need to work the O-ring down into the flange. And there it's snapped into place. Now I'll move to the actuator. There's just one O-ring on this piece. I'll remove it with a pick. And install the new one. Next, I'll replace the piston O-ring. Again, I'll remove it with a pick and install the new O-ring. There are two O-rings on the piston stem cap. one on the outside and one on the inside. I'll go ahead and replace both of those. And again, I just work the O-ring into the groove on the inside of the cap. Now the O-ring on the outside of the cap. Pry it away and install the new one. There's one more O-ring in the cap of the stapler, and this O-ring is not included in the rebuild kit, so if it's damaged, you'll need to purchase it separately. Now resecure the driver, piston stem, and piston assembly back into the vise. I'll reinstall the poppet and secure it with the cap. Now I can reinstall the internal pieces of the gun. I'll slide the driver and piston assembly into the bottom of the gun. Now I'll reattach the actuator to the driver assembly. I'll install the new seal that came with the rebuild kit. Line it up with the screw holes. Now install the actuator, again lining up the screw holes. I'll secure the actuator with the new screws and lock washers that came in the rebuild kit. Now reinstall the top cap and secure it with the screws. The screws should have blue Loctite reapplied to them. I'll install all the screws loosely and then tighten them all down so everything aligns well. I'll tighten everything up. Now reinstall the bumper. The easiest way to do this is to set the bumper upside down on a table and then press the gun onto it. Now I can install the nose piece and magazine assembly back onto the gun. The driver is T-shaped and will only fit the nose piece one way. The T portion of the driver needs to fit into the front of the nose piece. So I'm going to rotate the driver around so it's at the front of the gun. And now these two will line up during assembly. Now I can slide the base over the nose piece and magazine assembly and secure all of this with the 4 screws. Each screw should have some blue Loctite applied to it for assembly. I'll leave the screws loose until the end. This will help with alignment. The 2 blind screws through the base. These could be a little more tricky. and I'll completely tighten all 4 screws.